I come to you all today with a confession. For the last year or so, I've been performing a series of experiments, and without any of you knowing, you've all been serving as my faithful little lab rats. Apologies for keeping you in the dark. However, this research was done for the benefit of all of us, and today I'm ready to share the results of my findings. What was I researching, you ask? Well, a common problem that creatives face is when they come up with original characters, or OCs, and get excited to share them, but are faced with difficulty getting anyone else to care about their OCs. I've seen a lot of my artistic peers struggle with this, and it's something that I know frustrates a lot of people. So I set out to research. How do you make other people care about your OCs? How do you get people attached to the little guys that live in your brain and consume your every waking thought? Well, over the past few months I've learned a lot, and today I'll be sharing how I got people to care about my OCs and offering tips on how you can do the same. But first, real quick, let's do Hey Star, What You Drawin'? The artwork in the background is a personal piece I did a while back featuring the party from my character Verity's D&D campaign. I've been sitting on this footage for a while, but I'm using it now because I didn't have any other art to use for this video because I've been forgetting to record stuff recently. So you'll get a bit of an older piece. It's from like a year ago, and I still like it, it's fine. It's not a print or anything, so just enjoy the art process, we're vibing. Alright, and with that out of the way, let's put on our lab goggles and get to some science. So, one quick thing I want to touch on before we dive too deep is something I think a lot of original character artists struggle with, especially when posting art online. When fan art consistently outperforms original art. I know a lot of folks get frustrated when they, for example, spend days on an artwork of their original character and don't get much in the way of likes and views, only to post a 10-minute doodle of Spider-Man and get exponentially more engagement. It's super frustrating, but there is a pretty simple reason for it. People are more likely to enjoy art of a character they're already familiar with. Characters from established franchises are naturally going to resonate with people more because people have already made those emotional connections with the characters by, say, watching the movie or playing the game that character is from. So your job, as someone who wants to get fans for your OCs, is to establish that emotional bridge between your characters and your audience. And the purpose of my research was figuring out exactly how best to go about that. However, it's gonna vary a little depending on what you do with these characters. A big factor is if your characters are part of some larger story, and if that story is actually consumable? Is that a good word? Basically, if the characters are in some kind of story that exists in a readable or watchable or playable format that an audience can actually get their hands on. For example, several of my original characters feature in my webcomic Cast-Off. If people are curious and want to learn more about the characters, they can just go read the comic. The entire thing is available to read for free online, so getting people attached to and interested in the characters is more a matter of convincing them to read the comic itself. But for a lot of folks, their OCs are either part of a story that hasn't been released yet, or they aren't really part of a story and just kind of do their own thing. For example, I have a lot of characters I made for D&D, several of which I'm planning on recycling for a novel I'm working on. The story exists in my head, and I can share little facts and tidbit about the story and characters, but their stories aren't really consumable in any way since the book hasn't been written yet. So the only real way to learn about these characters is to see what I post on places like social media, Patreon, and this channel. Most of the people I've seen who struggle with getting their OCs noticed fall into the second category. They have characters and an idea for a comic or a novel or some kind of story those characters will someday be part of, but the piece of media is still in progress and hasn't released that story in any form. For now, they exist as just concepts. And concepts are a lot harder for outside observers to get attached to. So between these two types of characters, I'm mostly going to focus on the second group for this video, but the tips I offer will still be useful regardless of whichever group you fall into. So with that out of the way, let's talk about how people get invested in characters. You want people to care? Well, in my experience, there's 3 ways to do it. Via your character's design, their personality, and their story. So let's discuss. Let's start with character design. This is the purely visual element of your character. What do they look like, and what can your audience glean from them just by their looks? Discussing what makes a good character design would be worthy of an entire video on its own, so for now, let's just stick with the basics. A character's design can say a lot about them, and whether they're conscious of it or not, your audience will be making assumptions about your character based on their appearance. Plus, people can be drawn to a design just because of how it looks. As an example, how many times have you seen artwork of a character posted on social media and thought, oh hey, that's a cool design, what are they from? And then gone digging to find out. I bet it's happened to you at least once, right? I know I personally have a list of character design traits I enjoy, and if I see a character with those traits, I'll automatically be doing the eyes emoji in their direction. I quite literally made an entire video about this subject already. Additionally, people might be drawn in if the design is interesting or unique enough, if it has some sort of factor that makes them stick out. Do they have some kind of unique feature in their hair, eyes, outfit, or maybe even some kind of interesting non-human feature? As an example, I'll use my character Verity. I've had plenty of people tell me that the thing that originally got them interested in her was her crystal horns. They're a fairly unique character element that make people curious about her. Why are her horns like that? Do they do anything special? What's the deal? Now, Verity's just a D&D character right now and doesn't have a story people can go read about yet. Still working on that, stay tuned. But some other examples are my webcomic characters. People might see Vector and his glowing eyes, or Frankie's eye patch and bandages, and go, hey, that character looks kind of interesting, I wonder what their deal is, and from there, go read the comic or try to learn more about the character. So that's a few ways to draw people in with just a character's design, but while we're on the topic, we need to discuss another factor. The really hot elephant in the room, if you will. Because while giving a character a unique and interesting design is important, apparently their attractiveness is also a way to draw attention. Quick story time! This is Leon, everyone say hi. He's a character from the novel I'm currently developing and is a relatively new addition to the roster. I haven't said too much about him yet outside of Patreon, so the general public really only knows what he looks like. At the time of writing this, I've only posted like 3, maybe 4 pictures of him publicly. And just from that, the comments I've been getting are so thirsty. Do you guys live in the desert? Have I been depriving y'all? I was not expecting this much of a reaction to a handful of doodles. Anyway, even without knowing much about this guy, I got a lot of comments asking who he was, what his deal was, or just saying how hot he was, which glad y'all are having fun. Since he's a relatively new character, I've mostly shown concept and development sketches of him. But I guess between his weird hair, tiny little cool guy glasses, and disheveled but in a chill way kind of vibe, a lot of people have already latched onto him. And, good, you'll be seeing more of him, trust me. So, to put a bow on all that, if you're angling to draw in more people with your character's visual design, it's important to, well, show them. Draw them, make art of them, draw them in different poses or with different expressions, show off their clothes, their looks, highlight the things that make them special. I personally love to fill a sketchbook page with rows and rows of facial expressions. It's a fun way to explore a character and solidify their design in my mind. Additionally, not every piece you post has to be a masterpiece. Just doodle them and post it online. Have fun with it and be proud of them. Be one of those annoying parents with pictures of their kids in their wallet and just shove your OC drawings into everyone's faces. And if you're holding back posting Blorbo pics on socials because you're worried about being annoying, don't be. Your social media feed is your space, and you should post your babies as much as you want. And if that's still not entirely convincing, I am grabbing your shoulders gently but firmly and looking deep into your eyes. Post pics of your OCs. Do it. This is me giving you my seal of approval. Put the images of them into my eyeballs, please and thank you. If anyone gets annoyed by you posting art of your OCs, they are weak and will not survive the winter, and you shouldn't care about their opinions anyway. Post thine blorbos! Do it! Now, here's the thing. Having a good character design is a good first step to getting people interested in your OCs, but I find it's often the shallowest as well. People might like a character based on their design alone, and post thirsty replies to your art of them, but if you want them to get really invested, we'll need to go deeper. So now let's discuss personality. This one feels like it's pretty self-explanatory. What's your character like? How do they act? What type of energy do they give off? While personality is an important part of your character, it's also a little bit more difficult to get across to a potential audience. How do you show your character's personality? Well, in this case, there's a lot of different options. One of the easiest ways is to just draw them, I don't know, emoting in some way. Show them in different poses and how they express themselves. Drawing a bunch of different expressions can also be a fun way to explore the character and how they express themselves and give your audience an idea of how they act. One of my personal favorite things to do to show character personality, however, is to make little comics with my characters. You'll see these in my sketchbook a lot. I love to draw interactions that either happen in their planned stories or that are just fun little hypothetical conversations between characters. You could also do short little gag comics. I used to do these a lot with my OCs when I was younger. These don't have to be complicated or anything, but showing little snippets of how characters behave is fun, and I love getting little things like this onto the page as a brainstorming exercise. As a follow-up to comics, don't underestimate the power of memes. If you see a format your OCs fit into, this can be a great way to really quickly give people the gist of your character's personality in an easily digestible format. This can be as quick and silly as meme redraws, or even making little animatics to audio skits from TikTok and such. While I don't really make these myself very often, I love watching them and have definitely gotten attached to people's OCs just from seeing little skits on YouTube Shorts. Additionally, while I'd argue that showing your character's personality is important, there's also value in just talking about them. I've seen accounts on social media that ask things like daily OC questions and invite people to answer them. Things like, how would your character react to this situation? Or what does your OC think of this thing? Just using those as an opportunity to post about your characters can teach your audience a bit about them, and with every little tidbit people learn about your character, the more you build up that emotional bridge. Oh, and I'm gonna take a slight aside here to talk about one of my biggest pet peeves in regards to people sharing OC stuff. A lot of people seem to fall into the trap of being overly vague or just kind of talking without really saying anything. Let me give you an example. If I'm on Blue Sky and I see a post of a creator talking about their OC, and they're saying stuff like, "This is my character. He's really sad and emo and has a lot of trauma, smiley face." That's okay, but it doesn't really actually tell me anything about the character. You've given me a list of basic personality traits, but haven't really told me anything about them. It's like those freaking movie or book taglines that are just listing off tropes and don't actually talk about the plot. A fantasy story full of intrigue, drama, and adventure. Okay, cool, thanks for the word salad. You have told me nothing about your story. Versus a fantasy story about a magic child who is stolen away from his home and has to find his way back with the help of several unlikely allies. Much better. I actually know a little bit about the story now, and I, as an audience member, am way more interested versus hearing that first one. And by the way, that's the plot synopsis for my webcomic Cast-Off, links in the description. Nudge, nudge. If you're gonna tell me about your character, really tell me about them. He has a hard time trusting people because he was betrayed in the past is a hell of a lot more interesting than he has trauma, smiley face. Be specific. Give us as the audience something to learn about the character. Let us get to know them. Show me thine blorbos. And with that said, this feels like a good time to segue into our third factor, story. Branching off of character personality, a character story can also be a way to draw people in. A lot of the tips I mentioned in the personality section will apply here as well, but with a little bit of a twist. Talking about a character's story and the way they grow and change throughout your planned narrative, what goal they're working toward, how they're taking action to get it, and the relationships they have with other characters can all be a part of sharing your story without giving too much away. If your character is part of a work you're actively posting, like a comic, game, or a novel, then again, the best way to get a story across is to just nudge people towards diving into your piece of media. But talking a little about the story the same way you talk about your characters can help, nudge them a little harder. Like I mentioned in the personality section, talking too vaguely about your story and just listing off tropes is a trap I see a lot of people fall into. It may be easy to just say what genre the story is and list off a few buzzwords to give off the vibe, but being more specific really does help here. Consider a magical but ominous mystery story about facing your past. Doesn't really give me a lot to sink my teeth into, but a musician with amnesia gets more than she bargained for when her performances start uncovering pieces of her dark past tells you a surprising amount about the protagonist and the general storyline you're diving into. And that was the plot synopsis for my novel in progress, by the way. More about that story in future videos. Join my Patreon for development sketches and more frequent progress updates. Link down below. Nudge, nudge. If your story isn't out in the world yet and you're hesitant to share too much for fear of spoilers, I'd say you could probably worry a little less. Knowing basic tidbits about the plot isn't gonna drive people away. In fact, quite the opposite. It can be a big draw to getting people interested in your story in the first place. There's no harm in keeping the biggest secrets under wraps, but sharing little hints and breadcrumbs at parts of your story to draw people in. Plus, a good story will still be interesting even if people know a few quote-unquote spoilers. What's interesting is watching how the story plays out to get to that point and not the fact that it happens in the first place. We don't learn that Ariana has a dead brother until chapter 9 of Cast Off, but I pretty freely talk about it because it's an important part of her personal storyline. And people who enjoy a character on a self-destructive vengeance quest will probably be drawn to that aspect of her character arc. Is it a spoiler? I guess, technically. But telling you that didn't make you less interested in the comic, did it? There's no harm in keeping the biggest twists of your sleeve, of course. Lord knows I still have plenty of big reveals coming up in Cast Off I cannot wait to scream about. But I think creators in general could stand to be a little less skittish about sharing their stories. You worked hard on this thing, don't be scared to tell people about it. Additionally, I love a little intrigue. I love getting hints about a character's storyline that make me very curious. Drop some breadcrumbs for your audience every now and again, tantalizing little hints that make them ask questions. Curiosity can be a powerful motivator to get people interested in what you're making, so make them curious. Does your character have some kind of dark past or traumatic backstory? Do they have some kind of dark secret that plays into their storyline? How does it affect how they behave and interact with the world and other people? You want to get me hooked easily? Tell me just enough about your OC and story without giving too much away, and I, personally at least, will be sitting excitedly on that fish hook, waiting to get reeled in. Lastly, we're gonna finish off with some general tips. Sharing character tidbits on things like social media is all well and good, but it's also good to have a place you can point people to that has all the stuff you share easily accessible. The easier it is to find, the easier it'll be for people to find it and see it. Using something like Unveil, Toy House, or Artfight character listings are a good place to start, or if you want something more customizable, you can even make a custom website for them. Card is free and pretty easy to use for things like this. It's very easy to use and you can do a lot with it. As far as keeping these pages easily accessible, I recommend posting them alongside any character things that you post, putting the link in your user profile, etc. Again, accessibility is the name of the game here, so try to keep it easily accessible. And lastly, a general tip is to just be passionate. You love these characters, right? You must if you want other people to get as excited about them as you do. So show that. Be excited about your own characters. Be your Blorbo's biggest fan. Talk about how much you love them and also why you love them. Saying stuff like, I love them so much is fine, but being specific about the reasons is better. Do they fall into specific tropes or archetypes you like? Did you use your favorite visual elements in their design? What specific parts of their personality, design, or story do you enjoy most? What parts of them can you relate to? What was your creative process when making them? Again, there's value in being specific. I feel like if you want people to love your OCs as much as you do, you gotta be at least a little bit obsessed with them. Rant about them, draw them, yap freely as much as you want. People are drawn to passion like moths to a flame. As an example, how many times have you been dragged into a fandom just because a friend or mutual of yours was super duper excited about it? You want fans for your work? Be excited and share that excitement with other people. Passion is so important here, so don't be shy about sharing it. You'll be amazed at how much you can do with just a little bit of passion for these cool little guys you made up. So get out there and share them. Alright, and that's gonna be all for our main topic, but before we go, it's time for Star's Webcomic Corner, the part of the video where I talk about my favorite webcomics, boost my fellow creators, and give you guys something new and fun to read. So, let's get into it. 1600s Paris. Crowded presentation rooms listen in as scholars present their discoveries. Those with a gift for magic craft spells while shrouded in secrecy. And in hushed tones behind closed doors, love blooms between an apprentice astronomer and his companion, a necromancer entangled in the threads of life and death. However, when a series of bizarre murders shake the city, and dangerous magic users begin making themselves known, will the bonds between them hold fast? Or will the events they find themselves entangled in shatter the world as they know it? NOVAE is a historical fantasy comic I've known about for a while, but I finally picked it up and dug into the archive pretty recently. The series is lovely, with each panel awash in soft tones and beautifully rendered characters and stunning backgrounds. There's this soft, almost tender quality to the artwork that makes every page feel like a warm hug. Plus, the series has a very intriguing mix of a yearning romance between the two leads that constantly tugs at the heartstrings, mixed in with some very interesting lore and a magic system I was always eager to learn more about. The art is a joy to behold in every single page, the world is an interesting mix of historical and fantastical, and the story is equal parts heartwarming and heart-wrenching. This one goes some places I truly did not expect, and I can't wait to see how things continue. If you'd like to check out the comic, you can read the entire story for free on the website. Link is down in the description, and I hope you all enjoy. Alright, that's gonna be all for today. I hope you enjoyed this one and found it useful, especially considering there's a little thing called Art Fight coming up next month. Hopefully some of these tips can help you get more folks interested in your little DIY blorbos. I am sending you all the good vibes. If you want to learn more about my little guys, you can check out my webcomic Castoff or join my Patreon where I've been doing a lot of posting sketchbook pages and concept stuff from my novel in progress. I'll be sharing more about that project in future videos, so keep an eye out. Lastly, as always, thank you so much to my wonderful patrons for helping to make these videos possible, and a special thank you to my video shout-out to your patrons. Jared, Holly, Mr. Donmatsu, Alyssa Herzog, Felix Frenzy, and Neon Valkyrie. Thank you for helping to make yapping about my blorbos part of my day job. All that said, fare thee well, friends, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!